Kakadosh Boker Tov, Masechet Chagigah Daf Yomi 10a1. We are by the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "Yeah, heter nedarim porchin ba'avir." What does that mean? The heter of nedarim of a neder, right? That means basically that a chacham could come and he could annul, right, a neder. Porchin ba'avir. What does it mean, porchin ba'avir? Right? Poreach ba'avir means, he says. Yeah, it's af ba'avir. Certain people they're only af. Yeah, they only fly. Other than that, nothing else. So he says they have nothing what to rely on. Yeah, nothing what to rely on. Yes, he says Hilchot Shabbat, Hagigot, ve'amilot. However, though Hilchot Shabbat, right, Hagigah, right, we're not talking about Hagigot that a person does party. Yeah, Hagigah, we're talking about right Hagigot and meilot meilah. We know Meila is that when you're going to benefit from coaching, harem kararim atluim b'sa'ara. They're like mountains which are talui in a se'ara. Right? So these things are harim hatluyim b'sa'ara. They're like mountains which are mamash talui in a little tiny. Yeah. So he says like this. It becomes very tiny if you don't have glasses. Yeah. Mikra mu'at v'alachot merubot. Why? Because there's so little psukim that speak about it. Look how many halachot are. Yes, Mishnah and Yudam Mudalef. Yeah, that means look how many halachot of Ilchot Shabbat and all these things. Yeah, and right. So he says dinin va'avodot te'arot v'tumot va'erayot yesham yismochu. So anything to do with the dinim, whether it's dinim amonot, avodot is the korbanot, tarot, tara v'tumah, arayot, and more relations. Yesham yismochu. They've got a lot of what to learn, but there's a lot of psukim that speak about it. So there's a lot of what to speak about. The hen gufe Torah. This is what's called gufe Torah. The Gemara is going to say, what does it mean that this is gufe Torah and what's the but everything else is not gufe Torah, right? So we're going to speak about it. Says the Gemara. Tanya, we learned to the right. Rabbi Eliezer says, Yesh lahem al mashi yismochu. What does that mean that we said, right? That this is the way that we started that heten nedarim puchim ba'avir ve'en lahem al mashi yismochu. He says the Braita taught. Rabbi Eliezer said, Yesh lahem al mashi yismochu. Shneimar says in a pasuk. Ish ki afli lindor, right? Ki afli neder berkechad nefashot Hashem. Ish ki afli lindor neder nazil Hashem. So the Torah says twice even. So the Torah is talking about twice the concept of hatarat nedarim, and it's talking about ki afli, which is mamash. You're saying in mefurash achat afla leisur, uveachat afla leeter, which means once it's going to be a remes for the isur, once is a eter, which means sometimes you have to actually explain. Right? One time you're going to say he's mefaresh what exactly is the yoser. And sometimes he's actually going to say he needs a heter to get rid of that isur. So therefore, what are you telling me now? The en lahem mashi yismochu. They have what to yismochu, right? What's the problem? Yeah. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Yoshua says yesh lahem mashi yismochu. They have what to rely on, right? Why? He comes and he says Shneimar says in the pasuk asher nishbati ve'api. What does it mean asher nishbati ve'api? He says im yavohu emenu chati. What does that mean? He says like this. He says be'api nishbati. When a person was upset, that's when nishbati. And then what happened? And then chazarti, I retracted. So the fact that he said was usually when a person's upset, what does he do? Neder, right? You went, you turned off the AC. I'm not gonna let you. I don't know what. Oh, what happened was, right, is that when a person when a person comes and he makes a shavua, right, when he's upset, and then he says he's going to come and he's going to be chazarti. He's going to retract because at the beginning, when he's angry, he says things, and then after a few minutes, he calms down. Okay, what does it mean? It calms down, and all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, what happens afterwards? Once he's calm, now you could talk. You understand? Sometimes you see that. You see there's certain people that boom, they're ash after a few minutes. What? Exactly, this is procedure. Yeah. So he says, Rabbi Yitzchak says, Yesh lahem al mashi yismochu. So again, one more time, our Mishnah said, "En lahem mashi yismochu." Here we keep on bringing different proofs, right? I mean, we keep on bringing different proofs that they do have what to rely on. Why? Because there's a lot of psukim to talk about it. Yesh mashi yismochu. Shneimar says in pasuk, "Kol nadiv lev," right? Ivya et trumat Hashem, right? This is in right. It says that anybody that is a nadiv lev, anybody that wants to give, right? He's going to bring it to the trumat Hashem. Nadiv lev is right. Lashon hoveh is in present tense. It doesn't say kol shem the volleyball. Somebody that already gave. So it's mashma that even if a person came and he made a neder to bring, he's not chayav to be mekayim the neder unless if it's still right now nadiv lev. meaning that he cannot retract even right now. Okay, so he says, Chanina ben Achi Rabbi Yoshua Omer. Chanina, the nephew of Rabbi Yoshua says, Yesh lehem amen sheismochu, but it says in the pasuk, Nishpati v'kayem nishmor mishpet tzikecha. This is in alphabeta, right? So in alphabeta it says over there, Nishpati v'kayema, right? Right? So he comes and he says, Lishmor mishpet tzikecha. So there's in letter of Nun. So in the letter of Nun, it says over here in the letter of Nun, right? It says there, Nishbati v'kayema. I'm going to swear and I'm going to fulfill it. Lishmor mishpet tzikecha. So it's mashma from here that he didn't want to be mekayem, right? It was possible to come, right, and to actually be mativ this shavua. So Amar Rav Yehuda Shmuel, Yavai Hatam, if I was there, Amri Lehu, I would have told the rabbis at the time, Tidi adifa miditchu. Mine is better than everybody else. Why? He says, Shnemar lo yachel devaro. Hu eno mochel, aval acherim en right mochelin lo. What does that mean? It says when a person comes and he makes a neder, lo yachel devaro, he should not make his words chuli. What does it mean he should not make his words chuli? He should not come and profane his words. It says he should not profane his words, but other people can profane his words. What does that mean? Somebody else could come. It could be matir the neder, which are the chachamim. They could come. So for mine is better than all the other rabbis what they were talking about. Samarava Rava says lekulu itlechu pirchu. To everybody they have a question, right? Levar mi Shemuel telele pircha, except for Shemuel. Shemuel does not have a question against, right? Why? If you're going to tell me it's now going to be the concept of Rabbi Eliezer, he says, Dilma, maybe. Maybe it's going to be Rabbi Yehuda and name of Rittifon. The time was learned to write that. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishmon Rittifon. Yehuda says the name of Rittifon. Leolam enechad mehem nazir, shelon nitzna nezirut ela lafla. It says, none of them are going to be a nazir, right? Because the nezirut was not given ela lafla. What does that mean? Right? The lashon of the pasuk is kiafli. So it comes out that a person does not mekabel nezirut on himself, right? Unless it's going to be lashon barur umfurash. That's be very clear, right? That there's no safek, right? Why? Because if there is a safek, or there's something that he could, so then it's not considered nothing. It's not considered nazirut. So therefore, he says he does not become a nazir, right? Unless it's bevadaut. Okay, that's what he learns from the word of hafla. So it says the next one. Even the Rabbi Yoshua, if it's going to be a Rabbi Yoshua that he says that when he was upset, he went and he said certain things. This is what it means to say. He says, only when I was upset, I made a shavua. But I wasn't chozer bit. Right? So he says, so what does that mean? That means you could also push it off. That means there, he says, but he never retracted. If it's going to be a Rabbi Yitzchak, maybe it's coming to exclude of Shmuel. Right? Why? Shmuel says, it's not only enough just that you wanted to swear in your heart. Right? He says you also have to be mutzi bisfatav. Right? You have to actually take it on your mouth. If a person comes and he thought in his mind, right, whatever the case is, a certain type of a shavua or a neder, it's klum. The only time when it is going to be a shavua is, for example, let's say he goes up to the Sefer Torah, and he says in the Sefer Torah, I'm going to give matanat yedo. And at the time of saying that, he thought in his mind, my matanat yedo is $10,000. Yeah, there he has to fulfill it.
Although it was not loud.
Just b'machshava?
Just machshava. Why? Wow. Because there, right, the fact that he said with his mouth that he's going to give him matanat yedo, and he already thought in his mind what was the amount, there he's obligated. Exactly. You should know, by the way, that's the way it was. The once upon a time, the matanat yedo, right, the matanat yedo was like that. The matanat yedo, right, nowadays became the opposite. Matanat yedo means you should say thank you if the guy even gives you a penny. Right, that's the nowadays matanat yedo. You understand? But what? Yedo,
everything that he could afford.
Well, exactly. That was the original amount. So says Shemuel, Gamar belibo tzarich yotzi b'tzotav. If you finished it in your heart, right, which means you thought in your heart whatever it was, you have to take it out of your mouth. If you don't take it in your mouth, nothing. Right? That comes to teach you that even though he did not come and take it out of his mouth, if he went and he brought what it was in his mind that he wanted to bring to the Bet HaMikdash or the Korban, it's a neder. Right? Why? Because it has to do with the Bet HaMikdash. What? Yeah. No, there it's you cannot do Taran Nedarim on Duvar Mitzvah. Imi the Chananya, yeah, you're listening. If for Chananya ben Achi of Yoshua, right? If now we're talking about Chananya, the nephew of Rabbi Yoshua, Dilma, maybe it's Rav Gidal Marav. Remember, each one of them, the Mishnah came and said a general rule. he says that Taran Nedarim, they have nothing what to rely on. Why? Because those psukim that talk about it. Every single rabbi came and said, what are you talking about? There's tons of psukim that talk about it. So now the last one was Yoshua, right? Not the last one, it was the second last one, where it says, Chaniah ben Achir of Yoshua, he comes and he says, right? Nishbati v'kayem and nishbati v'kayem. He said, Dinan like Rav Gidal Rav. It says of Gidal Rav, minayin shnishbayin lekayem et mitzvah. How do you know you're allowed to swear to be mekayem a mitzvah? Mamash, you're allowed to swear. How do we know you're allowed to swear to be mekayem a mitzvah? So he says, Shneimar nishbat v'kayem nishbati v'kayem. From that pasuk in alphabeta, we learn from here you're allowed to swear to be mekayem a mitzvah. Right? Why? Because sometimes if a person doesn't swear, so he doesn't do it. Right? He doesn't do it. Right? That's like what before they said. What does bli neder? Bli neder means you're not going to do it. Right? Why? Because I ask you, bli neder. Oh, bli neder. Im neder. Why? Because if not, you're not doing it. You already know. Bli neder means you're not going to do it. Understand? So therefore, it's important to understand, right, that he says over here, that's how we know that you're allowed to swear in order to be mekayem mitzvah. Right? Why? There's a big Yitzhak. Yitzhak is not going to let him do it. He swears. Now he has to do it. Now that's it. There's nothing to talk about. Right? The Yitzhak lets him. Why? That's it.
But then if he doesn't do it, then he swears.
100%. But Shmuel does not have any questions. Why? Lo yachel devaro. There's no question. Because it says mefurash, lo yachel devaro, he cannot be machel devaro. But other people could, which means that the chacham could come and annul his words. So that is actually very, very good. Amar Rav Avitam Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak, says Rav Nachman ben Yitzchak, Kainu dam ninche. That's what people say. Tava chada pilpalta charifta mileh tzira dekare. It's good one pilpel charif more than an entire basket, right? Of 100%. What does that mean? You see from here that one pilpel charif, the one good jalapeno, is much better than an entire basket, right? Full of why? Because at the end of the day, you have the spicy, the picante. Yeah. You always have yeah. Okay, next. 2 dots. We just said that Shabbat.
What is that?
There's the Gemara. Ilchot Shabbat. What does it mean, Ilchot Shabbat? Michtav Ktivan. He says, 1 second. Right? They were written in the Torah. Why does the Gemara, the Mishnah say it's Mikram Wat? There's very few psukim about Ilchot Shabbat. It's written in the Torah. So he says, no, Lo tzricha lech de Rabbi Abba. We're talking about only for Rabbi Abba. Dama Rabbi Abba, says Rabbi Abba. So he says, imagine right now you're going to dig a hole on Shabbat. Right now, what happens is that you only needed the afar in order, right? He says you only needed the guma, right? But you don't need. That's what he says here. You don't need the guma. You only need the afar. So that means you dug a hole. Now you don't need the hole. What do you need? The afar that you took out of the hole. So he says you're going to be patur on it. Why are you going to be patur? Because this is going to be a minacha shentzich gufa. So says Gemara Keman. What does this go like? Obviously, like Rabbi Shimon, but says Rabbi Shimon, the man minacha shentzich gufa patur alea. That he says the minacha shentzich gufa, which means when you do a melacha, but you don't need the etzem the melacha, so then you're going to be patur on it. So says the Gemara, no. Afilu tema. Even you're going to tell me it's according to Shitat of Yehuda. Hata metaken hacha mekalkel. Usually, in the case of minacha shentzich gufa, that you're going to be patur. It's always at the end of the day you're going to be metaken. Here you're mekalkel. Mekalkel means you're doing something bad. When you made a hole in the ground, you just made a hole. That's mekalkel. That's why you're going to be patur, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. But in the normal case, even if you don't need the actual melacha, you're going to be chayav, because at the end of the day, you're going to be metaken. So then the Gemara asks, so then my karanina to misara. So then what is the kavanah then? That it's like a mountain which is talui in little hairs. What does that mean? That means you have an entire mountain, and the entire mountain is supported by a few hairs. What does that mean then? So says the Gemara, Yoda Mubet, says the Gemara, Melechem Machshevet Asra Torah, Melechem Machshevet Lo Kativa. Why? Because the entire Yesod is that any melacha which is going to be a sur on Shabbat is only Melechem Machshevet. Melechem Machshevet means that when you think to do an isur. So only Melechem Machshevet did the Torah come and the Torah prohibit. But Melechem Machshevet in itself is not written in the Torah. Right? It's not written in Furash in the Torah. Only to do the Mishkan, it's written, La'asot b'chol melechet machshevet. Only to do the Mishkan, but not to do with the Ilchot Shabbat. So therefore, all of Ilchot Shabbat has to do with your kavanah. Davar shenu mitkaven, tzikasha, what was his kavanah, not kavanah, mitasek. All these things are kavanot. But the kavanot are not written by Ilchot Shabbat. It's all, that's why he says it's harim, which are truim b'sara. How much? It's mountains. It's all talui in little tiny hairs. Okay? Then we spoke about Chagigot. Yeah. So now when it talks about the Chagigot, right, the 2 dots on the top of Yoda Mubet and the top of 10b, so it says Chagigot. Michtav Ktiva, and he says what? It says Chagotem Oto Chag L'Hashem. It's also written by the Hagigah. So what does it say? Also the Chagigot, right, are going to be Harim Atzuim B'Sa'aran. So says Gemara Lo Tzicha. What are we dealing with? The Damar Le Rav Papa L'Abai. Just like Rav Papa said to Abai, Mimai Dehai V'Chagotem Oto Chag L'Hashem Zvicha. How do you know that when it says V'Chagotem Oto Chag L'Hashem means a korban? How do you know that it means a sacrifice? Dilma Chogu Chaga Kamanachmana. Maybe Bemet it's just have a lot of simcha. Make a chag, chagigah, right? Not korban, chagigah, techogeg, right? Tachgog, right? Enjoy yourself, benefit. So says the Gemara, Ela me'ata dichti, from the fact that it says, right? Ve'achar ba'u Moshe ve'Aaron ve'yimon Paro, kol man Hashem shalach ve'chog li b'midbar. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, they come to Paro, and they tell Paro, listen, Bnei Yisrael, we want them to take them out. Where are we going to take them? To the desert. And what are they going to do? The fact that there, it doesn't mean that they're going to do chagigot in the desert, because you don't have to go to the desert to do chagigot. We're talking about mizbechot, we're talking about sacrifices. So he says, Hakanami, so to here, right, the chogu chaganami, it's also the same. So says the Gemara, fine, it's written, Vayomer Moshe gamatat tem yadim zvachim olot. Says 1 second, but it's written over there, the Moshe Rabbeinu comes, right, and he pulled the trump. Yeah? What does that mean, he pulled the trump? It means that he went and he said, not only are we going to go to the desert, you're going to pay for it, right? Not only are you're going to give us sacrifices as well to do it. Not only are you going to build the wall of Mexico, right? You're going to pay for it, right? So what does that mean? He comes and he says that. So therefore, it's barur from the pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu was mitkaven to bring korbanot shlamim. So therefore, obviously, we know that v'yachogulu iba mivar means korbanot. So maybe that's why. So he says, Dilma hachi kamar rachmana. Maybe this is what the Torah meant. When it says v'yachogu liba mibar, ichlu shtu v'chogu chaga kamai. So no, it means eat and drink and make a simcha in front of me, which means that maybe the milah zevachim is not teaching korbanot shlamim, but rather the shchita of the basar for eating, not for korbanot. Okay, so says the Gemara, lo sal kadaitach. We don't want to think like that. Why? The Chliv says in the pasuk, le'alin chelev chagi ad boker. You're not allowed to leave the chelev chagi. What is chelev chagi? Chagi is milashon korban, no? Now, these are, if you're going to tell me now, the chuga chagaud, that it's some chagigot, some parties, tarba lechaga yitle. Says what? There's chelev and chag, right? For sure, the chag is a korban. And therefore, in every single korban, you have prohibited fats, you have chelev. So therefore, what are you talking about now? Right? That we're talking about a chagigot, right? That you're doing like a chagigah. So says the Gemara, no, this is what it means in the Torah. Chelev abba bizman chag lo yalim. No, maybe it's the chelev that comes during chag, you're not allowed to leave it, which means all the korbanot and dava that you bring during the regalim, you're not allowed la'alinotam, right, to leave them without bringing them on the mizbeach. So according to this, it's not a raya. It's a general rule, but it's not a raya that the word chag means dafka korban. It could also mean chagigah. It could also mean that you're enjoying yourself, having parties, as they say, right? So he says, Ela me'ata. So now we're going to push this off and say, no, habab izman chagu de lo yalim, hadechol hashana kula yalim. He says only if it comes during the chag, you're not allowed to leave it over, but if it comes during throughout the entire year, you're allowed to. It says kol halayla ad haboker ktiv. It's written in the pasuk mefurash, kol halayla ad haboker, the entire night until the morning. So you see from here, it's a pasuk mefurash, and it's not only just on the chag that you're not allowed to leave over the chelev. It's every single day of the year. So what are you telling me? Only on the chag? No. So the chag means korbanot, not the chagigot. So says the Gemara, fine. He says Dilma maybe imeahu hava mina hahu laaseh katav rachmana hay lelav. He says 1 second. Maybe there it was only a positive commandment because it says Yeola right al mizbeach kol layla ad haboker, and now when it says Velo yalim chelev chagi ad boker, it's now a lo taaseh. Meaning many times you have mitzvot that is a positive commandment, then you have a mitzvah that is a negative commandment. For example, many times on Yom Tov, somebody's mechalel Yom Tov is mevatel a naseh and a lo taaseh. A lo taaseh, that's why he gets lashes. But a naseh, right, also a positive commandment, right? And the same with many things also. Which means that many times you find that there's a mitzvah which is also a negative commandment and also a positive commandment. So here too, he's saying maybe Be'emet it only wrote it to add on a positive commandment, not only just a negative commandment, right? Or sorry, here it was opposite. You had a positive commandment, maybe it added the negative commandment. Okay? So says the Gemara, Le'lav k'tav k'ra'acharina. For the negative commandment, I already have another pasuk. The pasuk says, V'lo yalim min ha'besar asher tizbach ba'erev v'yom rishon laboker. You're not allowed to leave over from the meat which you're going to bring during the nighttime on the next day. Okay, which means that you see from here, that means for sure the word chag is talking about a korban chagigah and not chagigot, because there you already have a negative commandment. So you're not bringing it just for a negative commandment. Okay? Nekuda. So says the Gemara, the dilma la'alvola b'shnei lavim b'asim. 1 second. If you just told me a general rule that sometimes the Torah gives you a positive and a negative for the same commandment. Yeah, same commandment. So therefore, if it's going to be like that, so maybe why can't I say that it's going to be 2 negative commandments and 1 positive commandment? If you're already telling me that you could add one, things like that, fine, right? What's the problem? So says the Gemara, right? He comes and he says, so why is we talk about only the Chag of the? So he says, Ela'atya midbar midbar. But rather, what's happening is that it's coming out to teach you midbar midbar. What does it mean midbar midbar? It comes to teach you that it's a gzira shava. It says v'yachogru liba midbar, that they're going to do for me sacrifices in the desert. And it's written over there in Amos, hazevachim mincha igash liba midbar. Ma lehalan, just like over there, we're talking about zevachim. So we're talking about korbanot. So to you, we're talking about zevachim. So it means we're learning a gzira shava from the midbar. That's how we know that obviously the desert, it was also talking about sacrifices. So from there we learn v'yachogu, that the word chag means a sacrifice. Because if in the desert they brought sacrifices, right? How do we know that? Because of gzera shava b'midbar midbar. So the word chag means a sacrifice also. The chagotem oto chag laHashem means that you're going to bring a chag to Hashem, a sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So says the Gemara, okay, fine. Now it makes sense. So now what does it mean? Remember, every single time, right, that we're bringing these things down in the Mishnah, there were 2 different halachot. First of all, we wanted to find out why is it that in laim mashi smochu, right, that they don't have things what to rely on, right? And this is what we just answered. We don't have what to rely on because, right, we just learned it. We had to learn it from Gzera Shava because there's nothing really teaching over there. And number 2 now, why is it like Hararim, Haturim Besara? Why is it like a mountain, right, which is Talui on hairs? So he says, Kabbalah lo yafina, because we don't learn the Divrei Torah, Dinei Torah, from Dinei Nevim Uktuvim, which means since the Gzera Shava is learned from a pasuk in Amos, and it's not written in the Torah in itself, therefore it's not that the Ikar is that the Chag means a Korban Chagigah. If it was in the Torah, so you had a Gzera Shava from Bereshit to Shemot to Bamidbar to Devarim, whatever it is. So then, okay, fine. Why? It's in the Torah. But once I'm taking Gzera Shava from Shemot to Amos, no. There you can't. It's not the same thing. You can't learn it from the Kabbalah, right? So therefore, because of that, we don't do that. So therefore, he says it's like mountains which are tluim mamash b'searot, right? Like a nothing. Okay. Next, we learned meilot. What were meilot? Remember, meilah means when you benefit from kodshin. If you have something which is kodshin, right, and which is consecrated towards the Bet HaMikdash, and then you benefit from it, that's called me'ilah, korban me'ilah. You have to bring a korban, plus you have to pay back the principal and the fifth. Okay, that's what's brought down. Okay, so says the Gemara, me'ilot. So says the Gemara, nichtav ketivan. So what are you talking about? Me'ilah is not written in the Torah. It's written in the Torah. So Amar Rabbi Merchama says Merchama, lo nitzecha lelechditam. We only lean it for that which we learned in a Mishnah. This is the Mishnah Me'ilah Kaf Amud Aleph. Okay, so basically this. Imagine right now you're going to send a shliach to purchase something with money of Ekdesh. Okay, now, and what happens is that it says like this: a shliach asa shluchuto. The shliach comes and he did the shlichut and he purchased the what's it called, whatever it was that he purchased. Balabait man. The balabait was the one that did the milah, and he has to pay back the keren and the chomesh, and he has to bring the korban hasham milot. Why? Because the shliach did his shlichut. Now we usually go that shliucho shel adam kimoto. So therefore, when the shliach comes and he uses the money of Ekdesh, he was shogeg. So therefore, it's the entire thing is considered now the cheshbon balabait. I come and I give Reuven Michael money. I tell him go to the shuk and buy this. Now I didn't tell him that it was money that was Hekdesh money that was consecrated to the Bet HaMikdash. He doesn't know. All right, he comes, takes the money, he buys it. I'm going to say Chazak Baruch. Go pay back the Bet HaMikdash, the keren, the principal, an extra fifth, and bring a korban. He's going to say, well, what did I do? You think I knew? I didn't know. Says in the Mishnah, who has to pay for it? I did. Why? Shlucho shel adam kemoto. It's like me, right? And we don't say what happened, right? He says, now what happens though? Im lo asa shlichuto. What happens? One second. What happens now? The shliach did not do the shlichuto, which means, so the balabait comes and he tells them to buy with chelek of the mouth of Ekdesh, right? And he went and he bought, let's say, a talit or whatever it was. So he says the shliach was man. Then the shliach, why? Since now he wasn't appointed to be the shliach to purchase this object, it comes out that the shliach was not my messenger. He did it on his own accord. Once he did it on his own accord, even if it was by accident, he's now chayav. At the beginning, I say shlucho shel adam kemoto, because he did my shlichut. I sent him. He for sure was shogeg. He had no clue. How is he going to know what this funny is? But here, when he does my shlichut, I'm chayav. If he now comes and he changes the shlichut, he's not my shliach anymore. Once he's not my shliach, he's doing it on his own. Now he's doing it on his own, now he's chayav. By the way, you should know this is a very big musar, right? It's a very big musar because many times people come and say, right, they send you to be a messenger. And all of a sudden you come and you change a little bit. You say, oh, big deal, I only... No. Once you change a little bit from that which you were sent to do, right? Now you're on your own accord. Now you're on your own. It's a completely different concept. Even if he does do the shlichut, why is the balabait moel meila? I don't understand. One person does the sin and the other guy is going to be mitchayev. What's going on? How could it be that the shliach is doing the sin and then the balabait that sent him is going to be punished? We have a general rule. And shech dvar avera, right? And shech dvar avera means you do the avera, not me. You understand? It's not you can't throw it on me. So says the Gemara, and that is the explanation, right? When we have that it's like a mountain which is talui b'se'ara. It's mamash like that. It's like a mountain which is talui b'se'ara, just like the Mishnah brought down. Okay, why? Because usually we say that in shech dvar avera, but here there is a shech dvar avera. That's why it says it's like a mountain which is talui b'se'ara. So says the Gemara, Rav says, what's the question? Dilma shana mila, maybe mila is different. We learn gzera shava chet from teruma. Just like over there by teruma, shlucho shel adam kimoto, and we don't say this klal of enshech. So too here, right? Afkan shlucho shel adam kimoto by mila, which means that we learn gzera shava from teruma. That the person could do it, even though we don't use this general rule of enshech. And Amarava, but rather Rava says, we learn it. We mean this for the Braita. The Braita says, "Niskar b'alabait velo niskar shliach." So the shliach man. What happens right now if the balabait remembered, right before the shliach takes out the money of Hagdesh? Velo niskar shliach, but right, the shliach did not pay attention. So then in that case, the shliach was the one that did the milah and not the balabait. So imagine right now, the balabait comes, he gives the money to the shliach. All of a sudden, after giving the money to the shliach, he remembers 1 second. That's Hagdesh money. Now the shliach does not know that. So now all of a sudden, it's the shliach, right, that is going to be doing the milah, chayav milah, and not the balabait, because he already knows it. So says the Gemara, shliach ani, right, ani amay kavid. He says, shliach misken. What did he do? What does it mean now? Because the balabait remembered, but he didn't. What does the shliach know? Why are you going to punish the shliach? Now the shliach has to come, right? It's a very good trick. No, you come, you give a guy that you don't like that much. Here, do me a favor. Can you buy me this? He comes. By the way, you should know. I just remembered. Right? That's Hagdesh money. So the chavod.
So he tells him. He tells him.
What? So that's what the Gemara is asking.
But if he tells him that the shliach is not going to do it.
So he says, no. He told him after he did it. So he says, that's what it means. That it's like a mountain which is the Misra. He says, Ravashi says, what are you talking about? My kusha, what's the question? Says maybe we're going to say that there's no shliach. It's not different from somebody else. It's going to be motzi b'shogeg mouth of hegdesh l'chulim. That even though he didn't know the money was of hegdesh, he's going to be chayav, right, of meila, right? So he says, So says the Gemara, Ela Amar Ravashi, but rather Ravashi says, the time we need it for this. It says in the Mishnah Meila, Yutet Umbet, Natal Even or Korah Shel Hagdesh. Imagine right now a person comes, he comes and he says like this. He says, imagine right now a person took a stone or a korah of Hagdesh, right? So he took a stone or a korah of Hagdesh. Hareze ma'al, he did milah, right? What does that mean? He did milah. The fact that he came and he took an object of Hagdesh, right, is not going to be mechayev oto milah. That's not lechavero, but if he gave it to his friend, hu ma'al. Now there's milah, right? V'chavero, right? He says over here, chavero lo ma'al. His friend did not do milah. So Michdi, let us see. Mishkal Shakla, he says once a person comes and he took already the object from the property of Hagdesh, Mali Umali Chavro, what's the difference between him and his friend? Right? Why? At the end of the day, it's the same halacha. So why do we say that? We said that if he took it for himself, it's not milah, but if he took it for his friend, yes. Says that's going to be the mountain which is talui in the searot. So says the Gemara, my kushia, what's the question? Just like Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel, but Shmuel says, Hacha here, Yudalef Amud Aleph, 11a1. Begizbar amesurot lo avne binyan askinan. Here we're talking about a gizbar. The gizbar is like the parnas, the one in charge of the monetary things, the treasurer. So he's the one that's in charge of the avne binyan of the which is to the Ekdesh. And therefore he says the cholehecha de mancha, that any place where he's going to put these stones, birshuta didei mancha. It's like he's putting in his own reshut. And therefore now it's understands that it's not going to be a mi'ilah in the fact that he's going to take it, because since he's not taking it outside of the reshut of the Ekdesh, that's why it's going to be different. So says the Gemara, Elami Seifa, but rather it's from the Seifa, where it says, Bena betoch beto arez lo. If he built it within his own house, there's no mi'ilah. Ad shiadur tachtei unless he lives in the house on the usage of Shaveh Pruta. Once he lives in the house, now he benefited from Hekdesh, and now he's going to be chayav in the me'ilah.
Where
Okay?
does it define?
Continue
Where does
with
it
the
define how much